Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining our Mandiant webinar today, hosted by Ingram Micro's Emerging Business Group. My name is Carleen Edge, Marketing Manager here at EVG, and today's training will last approximately 45 minutes. And just in terms of general housekeeping items, your lines are muted for the duration of the presentation, but if you do have any questions, you can go ahead and type them in the Q&A box on your screen, and we're going to hold all questions till the end, so we'll address them at the end of the presentation. I am going to be recording this today, so we will be following up with everybody, and I'll send out that recording link in the follow-up email. And if any questions arise after the webinar today, you can go ahead and ask those questions then. So now I will hand things off to Scott Fujiwara at Mandiant. Scott, the floor is yours.
Arlene, thank you so much for that. Andrew, you can stay at the first one here real quick. I'll just do a quick introduction. So good afternoon, everybody. Really excited to be here today with everyone, and especially with our partner Ingram Micro to present this webinar to you. I'm Scott Fujiwara. I'm the Channel Sales Director for U.S. Public Sector and U.S. East for Mandiant. I have 4 CAMs that are reporting to me that support our partner business. I also have a counterpart in Janice Kennedy, who manages our Western business, as well as Canada and LATAM. Today, I'm joined by a couple folks. The first is Ali Casillo. She's our Vendor Business Manager at Ingram Micro. Her team manages the Mandiant account for Ingram. I hope that you're going to find today's session to be really informative and really engaging. I'm super excited because we have 2 rock stars from Mandiant today. The first one is Andrew Kopsinski, and he is our Senior Intelligence Analyst. Internally, we get the privilege of being able to hear Andrew brief the sales team on a weekly basis, but this is a rare chance to really be able to bring Andrew into this forum, so we're super excited about that. Andrew's going to brief us on how Mandiant sees the cyber threatscape evolving, and I think you'll agree that once he gets going, you're going to understand why our clients really value this type of interaction with our client or with our analysts. Our second guest today is Tim Gallo. He's a senior architect at Mandiant, and again, another great resource that we can never have enough time with. So after Andrew speaks about security trends or about the cybersecurity trends, Tim Gallo is going to take us through a quick discussion to help us understand how you can apply what you've learned from Andrew to in-flight conversations that you might be having with your clients today, and where you might be able to start to position elements of the Mandiant portfolio. To close us out, Ali will join us again. She'll call up, or she'll give us some calls to action. And you'll also notice that I put my email on the last slide. I'd love to be able to hear from you, understand your feedback on today's session. So before I kick things over to Andrew, let me just take 5 minutes to tell you a little bit about Mandiant. So Andrew, if you can kick over to this. If anybody after this presentation wants a full Mandiant overview, or if you want to understand some of our solutions better, please again reach out to me, reach out to Ali's team, and we'll be happy to do that more in depth for you. But for the purposes of time today, I'm just going to go over something very high level. So if nothing else today, I want you to walk away understanding 2 things about Mandiant. And the first thing is understanding our commitment to our mission, which is here to help protect good people from having bad things happen to them. The second thing is I want you to understand our differentiators. So again, our mission is really to help every organization, regardless of what technology they're using, be more secure from cybersecurity threats. And more importantly than that, we want to make sure that they are confident in their readiness. And what that really means is that when an organization has something happen, they want to make sure that their technologies that they've invested in and their people know how they're going to respond in the moment. So as Andrew will discuss with us, what you'll see is that the threatscape, as we all know, is evolving, and it's no longer a matter of when, or it's no longer a matter of if something is going to happen. It's a matter of when something is going to happen. The way that the cybersecurity industry typically responds today to the evolving threatscape is with new technologies. And this is really evidenced by the fact that the market is saturated with over 3,000 different cybersecurity vendors. And what this really does for our clients is creates a lot of confusion for them. It creates a lot of complexity and an over-reliance on technology. At Mandiant, we believe that effective security isn't based on the security controls that you've deployed, but more on the expertise and the intelligence behind them. Mandiant knows more about the adversary than anybody else. And I'll give you two quick statistics. Last year, we were involved in over 1,000 incident response engagements. We spent over 200,000 consulting hours last year responding and helping organizations uncover and recover from incidents. And if you do the simple math, that's 23 years of human experience that was gained by Mandiant just last year. Mandiant can help your clients better defend themselves today and better prepare themselves for tomorrow's attack, because we're on the front line, and not only can we bring that experience to your customers and help them deliver those services on the front line, but we can deliver our experience and our intelligence at scale through our Mandiant Advantage SaaS platform, which I'm going to go over here in one moment. For the differentiators, actually, Andrew, let me kick back here real quick. For the two differentiators, again, what I want you to walk out of here with is our first biggest differentiator is our intelligence. Again, I kind of just talked about that, right? This really provides an early knowledge advantage for our customers. And again, nobody knows the adversary better than Mandiant. The second thing, our second differentiator, is how we operationalize that intelligence, right? What good is intelligence if you can't apply it to your environment, help it, or apply it to the security controls that you're using today to help you better prepare yourself or better prepare those controls. So we can take what we know and apply it to your client's environment so that they better understand the adversary. They can better understand what their response is going to be in that moment, and they're going to be able to make the most of the investments that they've or make the most out of the investments that they've already purchased. Mandiant is control independent, so we can serve every customer. We can help to improve your client's defenses, not compete with the technologies that they're using to currently defend themselves. And our knowledge of the adversary is only going to grow more as we start to collect telemetry from multiple vendors. Okay, Andrew, you can click over to the next one. From a partner value perspective, I want to make sure that you understand what your selling opportunity here is with Mandiant. With Mandiant and being able to really lead with Mandiant, you're going to be able to start to help your customer focus on outcomes. You're going to be able to get a bird's eye view on their security stack, and you're going to have an opportunity to be able to position your own services wrapped around the Mandiant solutions. And you're also going to find that you've got opportunities to both cross-sell and upsell other security technologies. So our portfolio is really broken down into two different categories: our SaaS offerings and our service offerings. The SaaS offerings you can see there in that first layer, they are represented by our Mandiant Advantage platform. And the Mandiant Advantage platform has 4 modules. Intelligence is obviously our cornerstone module, but then we have a technology called security validation. It helps you better understand whether or not your controls are doing what you expect them to do. Automated defense is a SOC optimization tool that leverages human decision-making using AI that's based on a Mandiant response playbook. So think about it like having a Mandiant analyst that's sitting in your SOC, being able to make decisions at machine speed. And then lastly, attack surface management. That's this is a new one to the portfolio, and this helps your clients be able to see their environment from the adversary's perspective. The services offerings, obviously a strength for Mandiant. We have a couple pieces here that I'll just categorize things into. The first is expertise on demand. It's over on the right-hand side. It's a flexible way for you to be able to deliver services to your customer if your customer doesn't know which Mandiant services they might want. Do I need transformative services? Do I need training? Do I need incident response hours? So again, this is a flexible way that you can leverage Mandiant services. The second is managed defense. So this is where you're really going to leverage Mandiant for managed detection and response. And our managed defense offering leverages the Mandiant Advantage platform. And then the last piece, obviously, is our consulting, right? That's where we can provide extensive consulting and transformative services for your customer. Things like incident response, red teams, purple teams, tabletops, trainings, things of that nature. For our partner program, wanted to let everybody know that as Mandiant, now that we've divested from FireEye, we are a channel first business or channel first company for new business. Since our divestiture from FireEye, we've been making iterations to our partner program to build stronger deal registration for our partners, to create better partner protections, and to improve our overall partnering experience. What we really want to be able to do as we move forward is make our partner program uniquely Mandiant. So start to look for these changes as you, in the next coming months, as you engage with both our Mandiant channel team, our sales team, as well as our Ingram team. And so with that, I thank you for your time. I'm going to jump off stage, and Andrew, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. So today I'm going to kind of get started by talking about really kind of the threat landscape in cybercrime. I'm going to transition and talk about what we've seen happen in cyber espionage and how those two different areas have really transformed in the past couple of years, and really in some cases in the past couple of months. And then I'm going to end by kind of talking about what we think is going to come next, where we're focusing on, and what sort of risks we're trying to get ahead of as the rest of the year kind of plays out. So I want to start by talking about ransomware. And there's a lot of discussions about ransomware, about how bad it's gotten. Is it getting worse? Is it getting better? I find personally that the really only way to understand how ransomware has evolved as a threat over the past couple of years is to put it into context. That first bullet point up there is a really interesting finding, and it comes from our M-Trends report, which is the report we put out every year. And it talks about the average cost of a ransomware attack in 2021. Last year, it rose to $4.62 million per intrusion. That's up about a couple of $100,000 from the year before. And really, the best way to highlight that particular statistic is to say, look, one individual cost of a given ransomware attack. And that includes, if you pay the ransom, it includes paying the ransom, it includes remediation, hiring somebody to come in and do an IR, all of the different things you have to do to fix it. Weighing that against the $4.62 million investment into security and controls is the best way to understand and explain to customers who are concerned about what might happen if they get hit by ransomware. But from a threat side perspective, I think the best way to really understand what's happening kind of in the underground communities in this wide ransomware ecosystem is to really highlight those second and third points up there. Last year, we saw a record 80 new vulnerabilities that were 0 days being used in malicious attacks. That is more than the 3 years prior combined. That particular statistic is really, really important for us to highlight, and it forms kind of the cornerstone of one of the main themes of my talk today, which is that overall, not just ransomware actors, but all actors are getting better at finding new and interesting and effective ways to break into organizations. What's fascinating is that of those 80 new vulnerabilities last year, a very significant portion of them were used by ransomware actors. In fact, we've done a different study looking at activity from January of 2019 through July of 2021. During that time, we wanted to say, okay, how often are vulnerabilities being used by ransomware attackers? For a long time, in cybersecurity in general and protecting specifically against cyber criminals, the worry wasn't really focused on vulnerabilities. Or if you were scared about vulnerabilities being used by cyber criminals, you were mostly worried about things like exploit packs used by kind of these large-scale banking gangs who were going after credit cards kind of en masse. Because of a lot of things that have happened in the underground and some seismic shifts in defense, the age of targeting bank accounts and bank and credit cards and laundering them has kind of fallen by the wayside in favor of these new gangs who are now conducting ransomware intrusions. The key difference between those two gangs and those two kinds of modes of committing crime is that for ransomware attackers, you're concerned about getting one big score kind of at a time. That relies very heavily on getting in and breaking in effectively. And vulnerabilities happen to be one of the best ways to do it. There are a lot of things out there that talk about patch management, how difficult it is to patch correctly, to make sure the right things are being updated at the right time, to even know which of your systems are vulnerable. But it's hard to understand exactly how scary it is until you start to realize that of those 38 different vulnerabilities that were used somewhere along the infection chain during an intrusion that led to ransomware, 15 of those vulnerabilities were 0 days. That's a huge statistic for us to be able to highlight, especially to our customers, but really kind of in general, to really point at how dangerous ransomware has gotten over the past couple of years. The reason being that if you're a cybercrime actor or a cyber espionage actor, or if you're just somebody who wants to break into some system, a 0 day remains the single best tool in your arsenal. They are incredibly hard to defend against. They're very hard to detect usually if you're the first one to actually use them. And they are extremely, extremely hard to obtain. What this means is that in the past couple of years, we've been seeing more and more ransomware gangs who have either the ability or either the means by which to hire an internal capability to create and develop their own 0 days, or that they've been actually so successful that they've been able to purchase 0 days from other actors who are in the underground as well. All of which is to say that these are really good ways for understanding and explaining to customers how ransomware has gotten worse over the past couple of years and how it's become more dangerous. When we talk about this continual increase in the number of ransomware attacks over the past couple of years, what we've started to see is that as ransomware has become more popular and more actors have either begun conducting ransomware attacks, or in many cases, some of these very well-established criminal groups who have been operating for years and decades have actually moved away from former kind of types of cybercrime in favor of ransomware, which is a big shift and pretty telling in and of itself. But as more and more actors are conducting these attacks, as they are finding new ways to get better at what they're doing, what we're starting to see is this interesting kind of Darwinian evolution in the ransomware ecosystem itself. We're starting to see these actors find new ways to gain leverage against their victims by means of stealing and leaking or threatening to leak some of the information that they get during these intrusions. That's a big one. This kind of name and shame site tactic where you see a lot of actors and groups and ransomware attackers come out and start talking about some of the best ways to make money is really to just kind of threaten to release sensitive data. Oftentimes the victims don't know what kind of sensitive data is going to be leaked. They don't know what's actually at risk. And so a lot of what's been happening is that these actors are finding new ways to really increase the leverage that they have over their victims. So they can come back and say, yes, we've encrypted several dozen PCs and maybe a few servers, but more importantly, we've stolen an awful lot of your sensitive data, and we're going to tell people publicly. And we've started to see kind of different variations of that same thing too, with certain actors who have gone out and threatened to or have attempted to sell some of the sensitive data that they've stolen to competitors of their victims in a really kind of interesting corporate espionage twist on ransomware. We've also saw some actors who really are driven to this kind of extortion and completely forego actually deploying ransomware. Some of them have been so successful at just stealing data and moving quickly once they get on network, getting it off network and then threatening to leak some of this stolen data, that they've started to just completely not deploy ransomware at all. All they're doing is moving around as fast as possible, stealing data and moving on. Really, really fascinating and an interesting kind of side effect of the popularity and increased number of actors who are conducting these ransomware attacks. You just have more people in this space, and so you're going to get more innovation, more new ideas. As this time has gone on, what we've started to see is that certain actors, certain groups have really started to take center stage. You have actors like Conti, actors like Lockbit, who are moving, kind of generally taking a lot of the market share, if you will, of some of these intrusions. And some of them have been really kind of disrupted by recent events, and I'll talk more about that later. But what we're starting to see is that consistently, kind of across the ecosystem, these actors are getting better. They're being more effective at finding ways to conduct these intrusions. That's why you see this rise that we saw in Q1 of this year in the use of exploits or things like web compromises. We've also seen this kind of renaissance in actors who have been conducting intrusions just using stolen credentials and some very clever kind of engineering, social engineering attempts. The groups like Lapsus, who were very, very successful at breaking in, but then once they got in, they didn't really understand what they wanted, and so they started to make really kind of wild demands. A lot of these things, as they've developed, have been really, really interesting to watch, because what we're seeing, as kind of the title of this presentation says, is a rapid amount of evolution in a very short amount of time. We're watching these actors learn from each other, figuring out which of these methods is effective, which of these methods is not, and kind of identifying ways for these actors to be better at conducting their main, their main source of income, which is conducting ransomware intrusions. What's fascinating, though, is that as big a problem as ransomware has gotten, and as transformative as it's been in cybercrime over the past couple of years, it doesn't even really begin to scratch the surface of how much the cyber threat landscape has changed in the past 6 months. And that has been driven almost entirely by the invasion of Ukraine. We have been doing an awful lot helping organizations defend against some of the attacks that have been coming in. We've been very heavily involved with a lot of our partners and customers, trying to help organizations stay ahead of some of the cyber threat intrusions that we've seen in Ukraine in the past 6 months. What's really been fascinating is that since the onset of the invasion on February 24th, in the past 4 months, we have seen more offensive Russian cyber espionage targeting Ukraine than in the 8 years prior combined. That's a huge and drastic rise in this amount of disruptive and destructive attacks, as well as all the other types of intrusions that we've been seeing in a lot of these cases. And that comes down to the fact that these actors have been directed and coordinated by some of the organizations who are responsible for conducting espionage for Russia. We're talking about APT-28, APT-29, some of these groups that are directly tied to state organizations such as the SVR, the Foreign Intelligence Service of Russia, as well as the FSB and the GRU. All of these organizations have been very heavily involved in enabling some of the invasions on the kinetic side as this invasion has taken place. But it doesn't really speak to kind of the seismic shift that we've seen in the past several months. A lot of that has come from kind of going, if we go kind of counterclockwise from that top left, and we can move to talking about disinformation campaigns. That's another huge area where we have a huge investment. We're keeping very close eyes on how these kinds of disinformation and misinformation and information operation campaigns have been trying to shape discussion, and really kind of before the invasions really started in earnest in February, we saw a lot of these disinformation campaigns that were trying to sow chaos and increase the fog of war. What they wanted to do, by and large, was make it harder for Western organizations to understand what was happening on the ground in Ukraine. They also wanted to make it harder for the Ukrainian government to actually respond to some of these threats that they were seeing. And they wanted to increase the amount of panic among Ukrainian citizens. And lastly, they wanted to sow as much division as they could between Ukraine and a lot of its allies. As these disinformation campaigns played out in real time, what we saw was a really kind of interesting wrinkle, which has taken place before, but really didn't gather a lot of steam until the past couple of months. And what we saw was that a lot of these actors have been timing and coordinating these disinformation campaigns with other disruptive attacks. One of the things we saw early on in the invasion was that there was a disruptive attack aimed at making it harder for Ukrainian citizens to actually go in and use the bank accounts or access their bank accounts through ATMs. That was combined with some disinformation campaigns in an attempt to kind of cause a run on banks. And what this really was intended to do from a large scale perspective was cause this kind of panic, prevent anyone who was scared about the potential of an invasion from being able to access the funds that they would need to pay for their means to exit Ukraine. And moreover, just cause a lot more problems and chaos that the government in Ukraine had to do. We've seen disinformation campaigns used in the past. A big thing that we're worried about here in the US is worried about how disinformation campaigns are going to play into the 2022 elections and what that's really going to look like. But we've also seen some really interesting developments as well in realms outside of kind of this espionage and state on state cyber campaigns, particularly in the cybercrime ecosystem. Prior to this invasion of Ukraine, any kind of Russian language or Eastern European cybercrime actor had a very unstated but very strong policy of not targeting Russia. After the invasion, that has changed almost completely. We've seen Ukrainian nationals who were former cybercrime actors very intent on targeting Western organizations, completely change some of their activity, start going after victims in Russia. We've seen some of the Russian actors who are actually based in Russia start coming out in direct support of the Russian invasion. And there's really been a big schism in the cybercrime ecosystem. Been a lot of contentious discussion in underground forums between some of these actors about how to use their ability to conduct these cyber attacks to further their political aims. And it really speaks to the fact that Mandiant has really kind of come to terms with for quite some time, which is that when you're looking at a cyber attack, you have to take into account that these attackers are human beings. They have desires, they have wants, they're social, political animals. They want and need to do something for some reason. And that really speaks to kind of that bottom point up there too, which is that since the invasion has taken place, we've seen this kind of renaissance in hacktivism, which really hasn't been as active in the past couple of years as it was in kind of the many years prior. In the early days of cyber, early 2000s, this hacktivism idea was a very popular one. There were a lot of actors conducting, large scale disruptive attacks using DDoS, trying to use cyber attacks to make a political or sociological statement. It's not something we've seen very heavily in the past couple of years. But with the advent and the beginning of this kind of invasion in Ukraine, which happened really kind of the 24th of February, we have seen a renaissance in hacktivism. All of these actors coming out in support of and against the invasion on either side, conducting kind of these freelance, renegade attacks on any victims they can get their hands on. It's been a really, really big resurgence in a type of cyber attacks that we haven't seen in quite some time. All of which is to say that these actors that we've seen conducting these attacks in response to this invasion of Ukraine has caused a pretty dramatic shift in how cyber activity takes place. And it's had a lot of these ripples that have moved outwards in the past several months. When we talk about cyber attacks from the intelligence-led perspective that Mandiant uses, we try to understand and categorize these actors according to motivation. Cyber espionage actors, we've already talked about Russian actors, but what we call kind of internally the big four, Russia, Iran, China, and North Korea, have been active in conducting these campaigns for years. What's happened in the past 6 months, and really kind of the past 4 months, is a really dramatic shift. And we don't know how long it's going to last. We don't know if things are going to normalize. But what we can firmly say is that the invasion of Ukraine, aside from all the impacts that it's had outside of cyber and kind of the geopolitical and real life space, what we've seen in this cyber realm is that these actors have really started to shift how they're doing things and what they're doing specifically. Chinese actors leading up to and during the invasion have been very heavily targeting everyone they can get their hands on, trying to get some idea of what's going on in kind of the diplomatic back rooms in Russia, in NATO, in the US. They've been extremely active trying to gauge how the reaction of the rest of the world was going to play out as the invasion began and as it's continued. We know definitely that Russia has been coming under attack from Chinese actors, specifically who are trying to figure out exactly what's going on behind the scenes there. They're not the only ones. We've seen plenty of activity from Iran, and recently North Korea has started kicking things off again. They seem to be feeling a little bit left out because they're no longer the problem child. But what we've seen in this large-scale espionage change is that these actors have started to see how these norms have shifted. One of the things that we've seen constantly in commentary from, kind of open source and media is that, oh, there's not a lot of cyber activity happening in Ukraine or taking place as part of this Ukrainian invasion. And that's just simply not true. We've seen an incredibly high amount of intrusions targeting Ukrainian victims. We've seen an incredibly high amount of retaliatory or aggressive support of Ukraine by cyber actors who are targeting Russia. We've seen a lot of different activity spurred by this invasion that has changed how these kind of paradigms in cyber espionage take place. All of which is to say that when you're talking to customers and trying to explain to them the importance of using intelligence to power and enable their cyber defense, there are a number of important reasons why intelligence needs to be the leading method to guide that kind of discipline as a whole. In order to better understand what's going to happen and how to protect your organization, you need to understand who's targeting you and what they're going to be looking for and how they're going to do it. One of the things that we expect to see as time moves on, kind of through the rest of 2022, is that, as I said, these ransomware attackers are probably going to continue to build out a lot of their capabilities to target victims. They're going to find new TTPs. They're going to find more ways to conduct what we call this kind of multifaceted extortion, where they find ways just beyond just kind of deploying ransomware on a victim's organization. They're going to find other ways to bring leverage onto their victims to force them to pay. That means we're going to see a lot more evolution. We're going to see a lot new vulnerability exploitation and zero-day usage. What we also expect to see, and this was on display last week when I was at RSA, is that as a lot of these organizations out there who are victims and at risk from some of these cyber attacks, so pretty much everybody, starts to move towards these large-scale cloud solutions, large-scale cloud providers, or relying on other people to supply some of the software that they use and developing these kinds of large and relying heavily on these kind of software supply chains. These kinds of attacks in particular are going to begin becoming increasingly common. We at Mandiant are experts in understanding exactly how effective a supply chain compromise through software can be. We were the ones who discovered the SolarWinds breach. We were the ones who, first told the world that this was happening. But we've also been extremely successful in preventing attackers from getting in and compromising cloud environments. We spent a lot of time on trying to understand what these attackers can do once they get into these cloud environments. And one of the best benefits that these attackers have, and this applies really to both cloud solutions and software supply chains, is that these attackers have begun to realize that organizations across the world are starting to rely on these huge providers for these services. What that means is that if these attackers are smart and capable, they have begun targeting some of these providers in order to gain access to everyone who uses those services. Gaining access to someone's cloud environment is great. Gaining access to everyone who uses a particular cloud environment is a lot better. That's what we started to see with these trends, is that these attackers are starting to realize that if they can gain access to some of these environments, some of these services, some of these supply chains, they can then be the ones to decide exactly who and how they want to target this huge, wide attack surface that they suddenly have access to. When we started conducting analysis on the SolarWinds breach, what we saw is that these attackers who conducted that breach had access originally to about 18,000 customers, but that narrowed down to about 50 that they actually wanted to focus on. And they didn't really pay attention to anybody else. That's the kind of threat that we're dealing with. Extraordinarily hard to find, extraordinarily hard to detect and defend against. And all of these attacks require really intelligent, really creative ways of detecting these intrusions before they happen, while they happen, and after they happen. A lot of these insights that we have into how these stories that we have from cyber intelligence and cyber investigation and all the research that we do, all of this information and all of these stories and all of these lessons get fed back into all of these different services that we provide. So if you have any more questions, I'll be happy to stick around and answer them, but I'm going to turn things back over and we will talk to you again at the end. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrew. We're going to turn it over now to Tim Gallo. Tim, are you ready?
I am here. Yeah, thanks, Scott, and thanks, Andrew, for giving us that update on the threat landscape and the evolutions that we see. I think where we're at here, and one of the key components of understanding the way the threat landscape is changing and how intelligence drives our clients' needs to ultimately create more efficient security operations is really where the Mandiant Advantage solutions, our services, and our platform come to play. One of the key aspects that we've talked about here is understanding who you are and what the adversaries that are targeting your clients as organizations is really important to help them better defend themselves against the most likely threat based upon their organizational profile or their demographic, if you will. And a lot of the capabilities that Mandiant brings through our threat intelligence is one of those key components. What I like to say about the new Mandiant direction after the divestiture of the controls product set is that it sort of recalls back to, and I'm going to show my age here a little bit, to those old BASF commercials, where it's not necessarily that we're making the tools that you use every day, but we're making the tools that your clients use every day better. And it's our job to be able to bring our expertise and our intelligence through either intelligence content subscriptions or any other portion of the Advantage SaaS platform to our clients, to ours and your clients' operations to make them better. And that can start as simply as being able to provide them with insight into what the threat landscape looks like, not just in these sort of short-term, one-off briefings, but through the regular briefings that Andrew and his team do for executives, as an example, where we can provide content and capabilities and understanding of what the threat landscape looks like and how it's changing to our clients' executives. We do that through our threat intelligence services. We do that all the time. And it helps clients get more effective at understanding how they need to defend as adversaries change their own tactics, techniques, and procedures to infiltrate commercial and public entities. This is one of the things that threat intelligence is really great at doing, is helping provide an overview and giving our customers, all of our mutual customers, a way to be better at knowing what the threats are going to look like and how to defend against those changes to the adversary techniques today. It's also really good for us to be able to help to understand the types of vulnerabilities that are being exploited, what the depth and breadth of that exploitation looks like, and how they can defend themselves. When we talk about things like, the broadening and expansive use of cloud and supply chain by the adversary, and as a targeting mechanism, and ultimately, because all of our mutual clients are actually doing that, they're moving towards more reliance upon those things. Something like our attack surface management capability is a great way for you to help your clients better understand what it is that they've got out there in the world, to know ultimately what those soft nodes or edges that an adversary will attempt to exploit of theirs is going to be. This allows you to be able to really combine the tools that you've put in there and the infrastructure that they've invested in, both on-prem and in the cloud, to know what exactly is out there and what are those capabilities that an adversary is going to take advantage of, to see if things are configured properly, to see if things are vulnerable to specific exploits that we have witnessed being used by these adversaries that Andrew had mentioned, to know how to ultimately pointedly put their defenses in the right locations and make the necessary changes to be more to have a greater defense, right? You can't put a person every 5 feet on a wall, just like you can't have 100% visibility on every potential endpoint. But if you know how to focus those defenses, that's one of the greatest capabilities that you can do, is for creation of a prioritized system. And the attack surface management tools help with that. One of the other things that we've got in here, that security validation, you may have heard it called Veridin. I think in one of the earlier slides we mentioned that it was noted as Veridin. This tool is really great for your clients to better understand the technologies that they've deployed and to make sure that they're working appropriately. So think of it from the perspective of, we want to be able to determine, are the tools that they've deployed defending them against the latest threats, the types of activity that an adversary is going to undertake when they're attempting to infiltrate an organization, exfiltrate data, like move laterally within the environment itself. The security validation capability takes all of those things that you've already sold into your clients and allows you to help them make certain that they've deployed them in the most efficient, most effective, and best configured manner with relation to the adversary type that they specifically are going to be dealing with. So they can run attacks as if those attacks are, a specific group, whether it's our favorite group from Russia or China, or any of the other ransomware groups as well. So we actually have the ability to not only just look at it from that perspective, to really drive sort of this large-scale programmatic overview that clients can use to regularly maintain these things, to simplify it and just say, well, what would you do if in the cases of specific ransomware? So we can actually run a smaller version of the security validation tooling with your clients that we just call ransomware defense validation. And ultimately, this allows us to take those ransomware keys and those ransomware tools that are used by the adversaries, and make certain that the technologies that you've sold to them, that they've already got in place, are appropriately deployed to protect them against those tools used by the adversaries, those ransomware tools that are out there. Another thing that we often do is application of threat intelligence in a security operations center. So if your clients have like fully functioning, fully fledged SOCs, one of the key components is the application of threat intelligence, either through manual ingestion of our intelligence capabilities into their SIEM, into their endpoints, into their network detection rules, or leveraging something like our automated defense capabilities, where we're able to take all of those events, all of those alerts, and apply intelligence directly to them as they ship those items to us. We can then identify known adversary events, prioritize and triage the alerts and events that are there, and make certain that they're focused on the most important things first, so they can drive their own investigative capabilities. At the managed services level, we can actually do all this on their behalf as well. So we've announced recent partnerships with a number of other endpoint technologies, not just the Trellix, FireEye technologies, but a number of other endpoints. In fact, at RSA, I believe we announced both of the partnerships with CrowdStrike and SentinelOne. The idea being that we can actually leverage our investigative expertise in a 24/7 modality, where we'll be able to apply intelligence directly to the events and alerts that are handled, and provide investigative back-end support to a client, whether they have a small SOC or a large SOC. So we can actually support you and the technologies that you've deployed ultimately in the client security operations center environment. This really drives that capability and makes them feel more comfortable knowing that Mandiant's team is in the background running investigations, driving containment strategies, and helping them be better, knocking down those incidents and making certain that they don't become a breach. That's the managed services component. Now, all of this also, one of the easiest things that we can always do is it really comes back to just our simple expertise. And as Scott had mentioned, last year we did around 200,000 hours of incident response. We can leverage through you and to your clients, ultimately the ability to deliver incident response capabilities to our clients. The easiest ways to do that are things like just a straight up incident response retainer, or leveraging our expertise on demand capabilities, which give them not only those incident response retainers and SLAs, but the ability to ask questions of our experts immediately as they identify potentially infected machines, as they've got questions about what's going on in the threat landscape and how they can interact, how they should respond to those things. The ability to sort of take multiple methods to be able to provide our expertise into their environment, whether it's through a managed services, whether it's through our incident response capabilities where we'll come in and help clean up the problems on their worst day, or be there to answer those important questions that they have when they're performing their own investigation, their own analysis of these events and alerts. It's our drive to be able to make our expertise, our intelligence, and our capabilities available to your clients. So no matter what tooling that they're using, we want to be able to provide our capabilities on top of that, so that we're not focused on any one specific set of security technologies or specific set of tools, and instead driving this to the point where we're acting as if we're part of their team, we're part of the oversight. So your clients have the Mandiant defense, if you will, backing them up. Think of us as being back there behind the scenes, helping them out, helping them be better with whatever the tools are. And we ultimately really want to drive this so that more customers are more secure, and we're keeping the bad guys from doing bad things to good people. That's really where this comes out of. And it's how we are taking this approach through our Mandiant Advantage platform, which is really that overarching platform which brings all of these capabilities together, and the ability to drive any one of these modules or services into our customers is really what we want to be able to help partner with you on. Pardon me. There's a number of other things we can go into, but Scott, I think that's a good overview for right now.
Yep. Great. Thank you so much, Tim. Really appreciate it. So we'll go over to Ali for our call to action.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much. So thanks, everyone. My name is Ali Casillo, and I work as our vendor business manager here at Ingram Micro, managing the Mandiant relationship. So as you can see here, we do have a pretty robust group of overlay field deployable resources that are here to assist you in growing and enabling your Mandiant business across your customers. And again, they'd be more than happy to help you have those conversations. So as a call to action from this afternoon in this session, I would encourage each of you to reach out to your regional contact or even myself to get these conversations in motion, right? So whether you're looking for more information, a customer demo, or even just a discovery call, our team that you see here can really assist you or appropriately tie you into the Mandiant team directly should we need a larger conversation. So that would be my main call to action to you today. Don't be shy, we're here to help. And again, thank you for your time today. We really do appreciate it. If we tap to the next slide, I also believe, yep, you have my contact information as well as Scott's contact information. If you'd like to give feedback on this session, have any follow-up questions, we're really here to help and are more than happy to engage with you. Scott, I'll pass it over to you if there's anything else you wanted to say before we wrap here.
So again, thank you, Ali, for hosting, and really appreciate your partnership with Mandiant here. A big thank you to Andrew and to Tim. Thank you for your participation today, and we look forward to hearing from everyone. Again, my email is here. Would love your feedback, and everybody have a great afternoon. We can wrap. Thanks.